Hi, it's Ant here, and I'm here with another screencast. This week we're going to recap MC410 week 3. So picking up from where we left off last week, I've just done a bit more work on my little beat here, if you have a listen. So I've just sort of put together a really simple electro beat. Now, before we go on, the first thing I need to do is rename the track. Now, you really should name the tracks as you go along. If you don't do that, you can end up in a real mess later on where you've got lots of instrument 1, instrument 2, audio 1, audio 2, blah, 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 and it's hard to tell what's what. Also, any clips you record, whether they're MIDI or audio, will inherit the name of the track. So that makes it doubly confusing. So I'm going to rename the track here. And because I recorded this clip before I named the track, it's just got that generic name. Okay, so if I right click on the clip and I go down to rename, then I can call that drums 101. I'm just going to call that 101 because that's, if I'd named the track originally that before I recorded the clip, that's what it would have said. Okay, so I've got my beat, I've got my 2 bars of a beat. What I'm going to do now is make another track and put in some simple chords using direct entry. Okay, so I'm going to go to track, new, stereo, instrument track, in ticks that defaults to, which is what we want, create. And so now we've got our next instrument track. So as I said before, I'm going to double click and I'm going to call this chords. Okay, as before, to create our clip, I'm just going to put it into record and I'm going to go record and play. And there's our clip. It just creates it for us. Okay, so we're still using this docked MIDI editor underneath, and you'll notice that, so we can see the drums. When I select the clip for the drums, it highlights it in the MIDI editor as well. But when I click on the chords clip, which has nothing in it yet, we can still see the drums. That's because in this docked MIDI editor, you can see multiple tracks at once, which is really great. When you're editing MIDI later on, if you've got lots of things going on, it can make it really easy to see things working against each other. Now in this section, the track section at the left hand side of this docked MIDI editor, the spot on the left hand side of the track there, that tells us that we're seeing that track. Okay, and then the pencil on the right hand side of it tells us that we're editing that track. So when we do any work on the MIDI notes, whichever track we are editing, the pencil will tell us there. Okay, so at the moment we've only got 2, but if you imagine if you had 7, 8, 9, 10, it would be very useful if you're editing like this to know which one you are actually editing on, especially if you're viewing more than one track at a time. So for now, what I'm going to do is click the spot on the chords track so that we know we are seeing it. Obviously we've got no notes as yet. I'm going to click the pencil down. Now a lot of the time you don't need to click the pencil down, because as soon as you start to edit on a track, it will go to that track. Okay, and now I'm going to turn off the drums. Okay, so now we're only seeing our chords track. So now I'm going to switch to the mixer. As you can see, Command and equals as ever is the shortcut. And I'm going to put an instrument in my chords track. The instrument I'm going to use for this exercise is Expand 2. Now in subsequent lessons we're going to look at Expand 2 in detail, but for now we'll just open it up. Expand 2 is a multi-timbral sound module, so it's got lots of sampled and synth sounds in it. If you go into the presets here, I'm going to go up to polysynths, and I'm going to, for now, I'm going to avoid the sounds that have the plus in front of them. I'll explain in a subsequent lesson what the difference is there. And I'm going to find something like, let's see, let's have a look at bit funk. Okay, so I'm going to close that instrument window for now, and I'm going to head back to the edit window. So I've got my track there, It doesn't need to be in record at the moment. And so this is our keyboard sound that we've got. So I'm going to scroll up to sort of middle C to C3, and I'm just going to put in some notes. So that's like the simplest sort of C major chord, okay? Okay. Now, well, I can select those and change the duration. And then maybe put a few more in. Move that somewhere more interesting. I'm going to turn it down a little bit because it is quite loud. Okay, so I'm just going to put a few more in. And I'm going to put another one here. I'm going to make it shorter. Okay. Now with this chord, if you keep it on the white notes, you know, we can kind of put it wherever we want. So if I take it, and so I need to make sure we're on the first, third, and fifth. Going to do the same here. Okay, so that's very simple, quite cheesy, but I'm just using it to demonstrate getting the notes in there in that way. So remember, in the grid, the dark lanes are black keys and the light lanes are the white keys. Okay, so because this is this major chord in that shape, I'm just going to keep it on the white keys just for simplicity of showing you what's going on. So there you have it. We now have our little beat and some very simplistic chords to go with it. Okay, so now we're just going to move on quickly, and we are going to look at some functions in the transport to do with tempo, MIDI, and the metronome. Okay, so if we move up to the transport here, the first thing I'm going to show you is this, which is the conductor. So it is like literally a little man with a baton. In all of these screencasts and in my teaching, I will be working with the conductor track on. Okay, when this is lit up, the conductor track is controlling the tempo of the song. As you can see, the tempo in the transport is actually greyed out. I can't go in there and edit that. If I want to see the conductor track, if you can't see it, it's a ruler that says tempo at the end of it. Now, as you can see, I can't see it at the moment. So I come over here, I drop this down, and I find tempo, and I click on that, and then I can see it. Okay, so this is our conductor track here. It's got a little drop down there. You can drop that down so you can see tempo changes that you make. Now, we're not really going to be getting into doing tempo changes in mid-song in these sessions, but we will be making use of the conductor when we start working with an a cappella. It's used for measuring the tempo and getting it to function correctly with the click, so that the a cappella will follow the tempo of the song no matter what you set it to. So it's very important that we get used to using it. Now, so now we've got the tempo track up there. Okay, if we want to put in a tempo change, or if we want to change the tempo of the song, so if we want to change the tempo of the song, we need to go way back to the beginning of the song. Now remember, because we've got timeline and edit selection unlinked, when I press return, my cursor is still up here, you see, so I need to click back at the start. So now I'm at bar 1, beat 1. So if I click plus on the tempo, we get this little window here, and I can set the tempo to whatever I want. I can click and drag on it if I want, or I can just type 135. Now, this is telling us the location that the tempo is going to be set from. Obviously, we want it to be for the whole song, so we want it to be from 1-1. But if for some reason you needed to have a tempo change somewhere in the song, you would just, you know, make sure the cursor is where you want it to be when you put the tempo change in, or you just type the values there if you know what the values are. So I hit OK. So now my song is 135 BPM. Okay, so that is how we use the conductor track. That's all we need to worry about at this stage. We will get it into it slightly more deeply in future sessions. Okay, so the next light here is the MIDI merge. And with MIDI merge, basically, if that is switched on, whenever we record MIDI live, anything we record will be added to the MIDI that's already there. If that's off, it becomes destructive, and any MIDI that's already there gets erased with the new recording. Okay, so I've got a keyboard plugged in right now. Okay, so if I have MIDI merge on and I go into record, I have to put this track into record first, and I go into record. So you see, it's added that low part that I played. Now if I undo that and I turn MIDI merge off and I go into record, you can see it's erased everything else and just left my part. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Most of the time we're going to work with MIDI merge on. It's very rare that I would turn it off. And then this is the options for the metronome. Well, this turns the metronome on and off. Okay, and when we say the metronome, we mean the click. But obviously, that's on at the moment. When I play, we're not hearing a click. To hear a click, we go up to track, and we go to the bottom of the menu and do create click track. Okay, now if I turn that off, we don't hear it. The click is only active when this is on. Okay, that click is really loud. I'm going to turn it down a little bit. Okay, so if I double click on that light, we get the click and count off options. Now, all of this section to do with MIDI click, like sending it out to MIDI, just ignore because we're not going to be using that. But we have the options here for when you want to hear the click, and currently it's set to be heard during play and record. Or you can have it only when you're recording, or you can have it only during the count off, and the count off is like the sort of the intro to when you start recording. I'll show you how that works. So I'll go back to during play and record, and the count off here. So I'm going to tell it I want a 2-bar count off. So before it starts recording, it will give me a 2-bar count off. Okay. Now I also only want it during record because I don't want to have the count off at any other time, only when I'm recording. So I click OK there, and then to enable the count off, I click here where it says count off to turn that on. Okay. So if I go back to the beginning of the song and I go into record, so there we go. So you heard it gave me the 2-bar count off before it started recording. That's very useful to know if you're recording MIDI parts. If I play, it doesn't do the count off because remember we set it so that it's only during record. Okay? And then finally, we have this one, which is wait for note. Now when that's enabled, okay, and you see this alternates with the count off. When that's enabled, it will just count off constantly until you play a note, and then it will start recording. So if I go into record now, so I can just leave that. That's just going to keep on clicking, waiting for me to play a note. Okay, so that's very handy as well, because it gives you the tempo that you need, and then if you're going to be playing a note on the one, it's a really good way to start your recording.